President Obama's plan to send military advisors to Iraq, possibly a few hundred of them, is not only controversial, it's highly risky as well. Pentagon planners are well aware of what could go wrong and the deadly danger the advisors potentially could face. Our Pentagon correspondent Barbara Starr is joining us. What are you picking up, Barbara, over there?
Well, Wolf, now that there's been the big announcement, the hard work begins. The Pentagon working out all the details. At the White House podium, it sounds easy.
We're prepared to send a small number of additional American military advisors, up to 300.
But 24 hours later, could the plan already be in trouble? The Pentagon acknowledging it doesn't have a legal agreement with the Iraq government to send in those advisors, but insisting they are certain they will get one.
We're pursuing something in writing. The Secretary is absolutely committed to making sure that our troops have the legal protections, and he would not do that on a nod and a wink.
For now, the first troops will be drawn from those already in the country. As the fighting rages, U.S. officials already know plenty else could go wrong. One senior defense official telling CNN the whole mission is not without risk. If the legal problem is resolved, some U.S. troops will go to northern Iraq, the stronghold of ISIS Sunni militant fighters. How much will small numbers of U.S. special forces really be able to see? And the big concern? U.S. troops are not supposed to be in combat, but what if they are attacked? CNN has learned F-18s flying off the carrier George H.W. Bush would be authorized to drop bombs on ISIS positions if U.S. lives are at risk. Classified rescue plans call for troops to quickly fly from ships in the Persian Gulf or nearby Kuwait. But it could take hours to get on scene, and no guarantee any wounded would get to medical care in that golden hour typical in a war zone.
If somebody gets hurt, wherever they get hurt around the world, we do what we can to get them to the medical care as quickly as possible.
U.S. troops are supposed to be collecting intel on what ISIS is doing inside Iraq. But a senior administration official says potential action is not restricted to a, quote, specific geographic space. In fact, U.S. reconnaissance flights are now closely watching the Syrian border for movement of ISIS personnel and weapons, as well as the Iranian border for their troops moving in. Now, Wolf, what obviously comes to mind is back in 2011, the U.S. could not get an agreement with the government of Nouri al-Maliki to allow U.S. troops to stay at that point, so they left. Now, the question really is, can they get Maliki and the Iraqi government to deliver and sign on the dotted line on an agreement so U.S. troops can go in at the Iraqi request and act as military advisors? Wolf?
All right, Barbara, stand by because we're going to get some answers right now on those two specific questions you just raised. The Pentagon Press Secretary, Rear Admiral John Kirby, is here in the Situation Room. Admiral, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Wolf.
Will these American troops, the 300 that the president spoke about yesterday, have immunity from Iraqi prosecution? That's the big issue that prevented the U.S. from keeping a residual force in Iraq at the end of 2011.
We're working that very hard right now, and I can tell you they absolutely will have the legal protections that they need. The president, the commander-in-chief, and Secretary of Defense wouldn't order them into these missions without those protections, and they'll get them.
So let's talk about that. You say, how long will it take? Because some of those troops, we told as early as tomorrow, could be arriving.
Well, we're going to, the first couple of teams are going to probably be formed from troops that are already in Iraq right now. And they have not been formed into assessment teams right now. That could happen very, very soon. And I think follow-on teams for a total of about a half a dozen to start with, probably over the next week to 10 days. But again, I think we're working this very hard, and we're not concerned that we're not going to be able to get those legal protections in place.
Well, when you say some of those troops are already in Iraq right now, you're referring to Marines who protect the U.S. Embassy?
I'm talking about the folks that were already working in the embassy before in an office called the Office of Security Cooperation.
But don't they have diplomatic immunity if they work at the embassy?
They do. Through the embassy, they do have the legal protections they need. So again, I don't think this is going to be a showstopper at all. We're working this.
So let's just be precise on this because it's a sensitive issue. The 300 Special Operations Forces, the Delta Force, the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, who the president spoke about yesterday, will they have diplomatic immunity, or will they have the immunity provided to visiting U.S. military personnel as part of a status of forces agreement based on what you know?
They'll have something different than the protections that are given to State Department personnel, but it'll be something unique, something different, and tailored to their mission and what they're doing in the country.
And Nouri al-Malki's on board.
We were asked to come in by the government of Iraq. This is a discussion we're having right now, and we're confident we're going to get there.
Will the U.S. also be involved, not only going after ISIS forces in Iraq, but also in neighboring Syria? Because there's a lot more ISIS forces in Syria. They're moving into Iraq, but there's a lot more in Syria right now. If you start attacking positions of ISIS forces in northern Iraq, will you also go after ISIS positions in Syria?
The mission right now is not to go after ISIL. The mission is really threefold. One, assess the state of the Iraqi security forces. Two, assess the security situation on the ground. We need to get better intelligence before the president can make any kind of kinetic decisions. And number three, we need to assess the advising mission itself. How many advisors total do we need? Where do they need to go? And we have to stand up these two joint operations centers. So the mission of these folks right now is really to do some good assessment and some advice.
When you say how many, I thought the number was 300. Are you suggesting it could go up?
The president said up to 300. We don't anticipate it going any higher than that, but it may not go that high. We're just going to have to see what these folks find when they get on the ground.
Are you ruling out attacks on ISIS forces in Syria?
Well, it's not time to rule anything out. The president's made it clear he's going to preserve that options for strikes in the future, but we need to know more before we can get to that point.
Let me read to you what General David Petraeus, retired U.S. general, said in an interview in the Telegraph in London. If ISIS is seen as a terrorist organization with the potential to engage in terrorist acts beyond the Middle East, then that could warrant the targeting of high-value targets. Is he on board with you? Are you on board with him?
Well, I think the general he's absolutely right in his assessment of ISIL. And again, the president, Secretary of Defense noted that they're not just a threat to the people of Iraq. They are in our national interest. They are a threat to our own national security. But we're going to take this in steps. We're going to do this the right way. The first thing to do is to get on the ground and learn more about what they're doing, where they are, how they operate, and also get a better sense of the Iraqi security forces and their capability of countering these terrorists themselves inside their own country.
Is the stay of the 300 U.S. personnel who are going, military personnel who are going to Iraq right now, up to 300, is that open-ended, or is there a target date how long they should be there?
Well, it's neither, right? I mean, I don't have a deadline here for you, but it's also it's going to be a temporary, a short-term duration mission, but we haven't put a date certain on the end of it. But it's very clear that the direction we've been given is that this is an immediate step, a near-term step, and then we'll take it from there.
I don't know if you watched the CNN documentary in the 60s. It aired last night on the Vietnam War and how a few hundred U.S. advisors went in the early 1960s into Vietnam, supposed to be just a few hundred, and as you well know, hundreds of thousands of American troops eventually were in Vietnam. 50,000 American troops were killed. That mission creep, as they like to call it. A lot of Americans are concerned about that when they hear about these initial 300 going back in.
Sure, I tell you, the Commander-in-Chief couldn't have been more clear. Wolf, we're not going to introduce ground troops in combat action in Iraq. We've been given that guidance. That's the direction we're following.
Will U.S. taxpayers pay for the introduction of these troops, or is the Iraqi government going to reimburse the United States for the cost, whatever this cost will be?
I don't think there's been any discussion about reimbursement. Clearly, we're going to facilitate the movement of these advisors into the country. I don't believe there's been a discussion about reimbursement right now.
So you have the USS aircraft carrier, the George H.W. Bush now. Is it already in the northern part of the Persian Gulf, close to Iraq?
She is in the northern part of the Arabian Gulf, yes.
And so they're standing by. They haven't done anything militarily yet, right?
Well, they have flown a few what we call ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
So they are flying. They're doing reconnaissance.
They're doing some reconnaissance flights off the aircraft carrier, yes.
And what about the support ships? Because it comes with a whole carrier battle group. What are they doing?
Well, there is a cruiser and 3 destroyers as well in the Arabian Gulf. We also have an amphibious ship, the Mesa Verde, who's been moved in. They are with or near the carrier. Certainly, they act to help protect the carrier, and they can be called upon for other missions as required. But right now, there is no kinetic, what we'd call an active military option being pursued other than these advisors.
So they're on standby, just as U.S. troops in Kuwait or elsewhere in the region are on standby if necessary.
That's right. And I'd like to remind you, I mean, we have more than 30,000 troops in the region. The Middle East remains a heavy focus for the United States military. We're well postured, well prepared, and we've been doing the necessary planning that we need to do should the Commander-in-Chief need additional resources.
On an unrelated matter, the Washington Post now reporting that more than 400 large military drones have crashed since 2001, U.S. military drones. Is that true?
First I'm hearing about it, Wolf. I honestly don't know. I haven't seen that report.
That just moved like a couple hours or so ago.
Okay.
So you'll find out. You'll let us know.
I will find out and let you know.
Let us know if it's true or not. We're on for 2 hours.
Will.
So you'll let us know.
I will.
Rear Admiral John Kirby, good luck to you. Good luck to all the men and women who are involved in this. We're all very, very worried about the potential. You heard Barbara's worst case fears, and those are realistic fears. We appreciate your coming in.
Thanks, Wolf. Glad to be here.
Coming up, the Vice President Joe Biden makes an urgent trip to Central America, trying to stop the flood of children, unaccompanied children, trying to cross into the United States illegally. And later, an angry demonstration turns to chaos as security forces attack. Members of a CNN crew were caught right in the middle of it, kept their camera rolling. You're going to see what happened. Stay with us. You're in The Situation Room.